joined today by Dr. Lindsay Meeker, Associate Professor of Literacy, Early, Bilingual, and Special Education in the Kremen School of Education and Human Development at Fresno State, here to discuss her participation in the program Equitable Education with Universal Design for Learning. That was a mouthful of an introduction. Also joined by my colleague, Ashley Abrahamson, Universal Design for Learning Accessibility Specialist in the Office of Ideas, and the co-creator of the EEUDL program alongside Dr. Kimberly Coy, who's also, I believe, in your department there, Dr. Meeker.
He's in my department.
And I'm Jason McGinsey. I'm an instructional designer here in the Office of Ideas at Fresno State. So before we get into your experience with the program, can you please share a little bit about the courses and students that you teach?
So I mostly teach residency students, and I am an assistant professor. I'll get to associate someday. But I teach mostly residency students in the multi-subject credential for the for LEPC department. So we have residency programs out in schools, and that's mostly what I do, is that they are working all day as residency teachers, and then they're in class with me in the evening is generally the students that I have. And as well as some of the students are specifically early childhood focused. So they're focused on that pre-K through third grade space. And so a little bit of a mix between kind of a large range of age group and then that early childhood. A lot of my students are working parents, or they might have other family responsibilities because it's not their first degree. So it's a stack on degree with their bachelor's that they already have.
And Ashley, can you tell us a little bit about the program that y'all put together that Dr. Meeker went through?
Yeah, so Equitable Education with Universal Design for Learning, or EEUDL for short, even though that's still a little bit of a longer one, is a program designed to introduce some of the foundations related to Universal Design for Learning, which at its core is, a designed mindset when it comes to teaching in the classroom, into designing with the variability and the barriers that your students face in the classroom, and using design of the learning opportunity as an opportunity to help mitigate those places where barriers might occur. So that way everyone is able to learn to their full potential. There are a lot of layers to Universal Design for Learning and its framework from CAST. And we spent 4 weeks every other week meeting in person with an asynchronous learning opportunity in between to explore some core concepts into how UDL approaches design thinking in terms of how students learn, and culminated with a final project where our participants considered a way that they could 1+ UDL into their classrooms. So finding one area that they could focus on and achieve for their students.
So, Dr. Meeker, what made you sign up for EEUDL, and what was the experience like for you?
I signed up because UDL is kind of something that I'm drawn to anyways. And my work in UDL tends to fall with young children and the teachers of young children. And so for me, this was interesting to think about it from more introspectively of how am I using it in my college courses versus teaching somebody how to use it with small children. And really, I learned so much more than I expected about myself as an educator as I dived into the modules that were provided throughout our time together than I ever expected. So that was great. I had that base already for UDL, but the way that it impacts my teaching or the unexpected things I might not have been thinking about as far as access, especially through online courses, was really enlightening for me.
Okay, so as you went through the program, or as you were going through it, and having these introspective moments, what resonated with you that you either wanted to implement or you're thinking about implementing with your classes? And if you have done anything, how's it gone?
So I've always offered choice, but I think almost too much at the university level. thinking like they're adults and just kind of go at it, right? But I kind of learned from this course that yes, the choice is good, but how are you preparing them to be ready to make choices about their learning? And so I've been able to think about, how do I describe the choices more thoroughly? How do I make sure there's examples of those choices? How do I make sure there's not so many choices that we're getting stuck in like decision making versus just moving forward on the project? And so I think that was one of the things that really stood out, as this was a beneficial change that I made in my course, from more of a, I guess, completely unstructured, like free inquiry way to approach an assignment, to like more of a guided approach to choosing products and why they might be the right product for the information that's being shared. And so I think that was really helpful.
UDL is all about ensuring, we offer clear and explicit expectations, which by nature open up a lot of potential for flexibility, where sometimes we may not think that flexibility could exist, or like you said, the choice kind of shuts people down and then they either make the default choice, right? We talked about essays tend to get defaulted to a lot because students get comfortable doing them in their classes. So being able,
I'll just write a paper. Yeah. Like if I can do anything, then I guess that's where I'll default to, or I guess I'll do a PowerPoint slide, but varying those product choices was helpful. And Ashley was really helpful, and Kim, about thinking like, are you making the way that you're doing your universal design, are you making it accessible to everyone, but also like comfortable for them to make choices within their scope? So, my students have been working all day, and how we learned in this course to do that is you really have to have a conversation with them about what they need, right? So I was assuming like free choice was what everybody would want, because that leaves it wide open. But when I actually had the conversation with my students about what do we currently have in place that is serving you, what is not serving you, and how could that be better? A lot of them said, I'm working all day. By the time I get on at night, when you just say, go ahead and like choose how you want to show me your learning, without any of those options, it almost feels harder than if you gave me only one choice, because it feels exhausting. And I was like, okay, I didn't even think about that. And so that was helpful for me to think about from them.
So what kind of product choices were the students making beyond essays and PowerPoints? What were they actually doing or creating?
So when we finally got to our final project, one of the final projects that they needed to complete was about inquiry design and how you can use that in a classroom with their particular grade level. And how that fits with literacy. And so I did give a choice between a slide deck, a video, or an infographic. And I had to stretch myself a little bit, just because I like to hear their thinking. And on the infographic, I was like, do I make them explain it? And I'm like, no, like they're showing their learning in the way that they need to. So I had to step out of my comfort zone a little bit to say, okay, that one doesn't really have a auditory component that I like to have. But I was really blown away by the products that the students came up with. They did a great job. They used visuals to their advantage, and it was great. So they could either make a video or do the infographic, or they could do a regular slide deck if that's what they felt most comfortable doing. We also had an opportunity where they had a choice where they could either participate in small groups, or they could log off and work on a podcast about the same topic. That was something new that I tried this time. I wasn't getting a ton of participation. It was a big class. So there was about 55 students in there because it was a double section. And I'm like, there's some students I'm just not hearing from. So what can I do to vary their engagement choices, right? So product choice, yeah, but also like their engagement and actions within the course. And so I did set up a couple discussion opportunities on key topics where they could either choose to go into a small group and be a part of that discussion, or they could choose to make a podcast on the topic and share it back to me. And so that was cool. I had a couple students that I don't think I'd heard from all semester, but when they weren't being like having to navigate who was going to be talking or who's unmuting and just really talk about what they know, they were able to do that in a really complete way. And I think that felt less anxiety inducing for them. I think sometimes I still need them to have discussion, but in these contexts that worked. And it was a nice solution.
So one of the things that I have heard from some folks is when you do things where students have choice and they're doing things that are, someone's working alone and people are working in groups, or someone's doing an essay and someone else is doing a video. How do you grade all of those things in a way that is equitable, when maybe the work to produce it may not be the same, even if the learning is what you're measuring? Ashley likes to tell us about performance goals versus learning goals. That's probably something you all talked about in the class as well.
So first of all, I'm not huge on a graded scale that we have to use. So know that that's my bias going into this conversation, is that I would rather measure learning and then give points. But we're on a point system, so okay. So that's what I do. But when I do create a rubric, I really create the rubric around the learning and not necessarily their diligence to the product, I guess you would say. There's usually a small amount of points for like, did you like put effort into this? And can I see the fact that there was work here? Yes. But other than that, for example, if I'm doing an assignment where the task is that they need to share about foundational skills and literacy, if their information is accurate and it's from quality sources, then I know they've met the TPE for that standard of understanding foundational literacy skills. Well, that's the purpose of the assignment. So, and in teacher ed, that's very clear, right? We have these teacher expectations that they need to meet. And so I try really hard to center my rubrics around those TPEs, and not so much around, was your video the highest quality video I've ever seen? Yeah, probably not, right? Was your infographic perfect? No, but if the content was there that shows me that they understand foundational literacy skills and how to employ that with kids, I'm not worried about the product as much. So that's how I tend to approach grading on a varied product.
Do you feel like that helps you with like the timeliness of your grading? Do you feel like it's easier for you, or do you feel like it takes more time to kind of assess those points?
I don't know if it takes me more or less time, but it's less annoying to me. Like, if I let go of the fact that I think, like, why would you choose those visuals, or why would you not put borders on that? Like, if I let go of the stuff that just grates on me, and really focus on those TPEs or the, whatever those objectives might be for the lesson, I'm able to let go of things and not worry so much about them.
And how do the students respond to that particular method of evaluation? I know they're probably more familiar with.
Some of them like it and some of them don't.
Yeah.
I got feedback
Learner
both
variability,
ways.
Right?
I got feedback both ways. My course feedback this time, it was showing me I have some things to learn about how to not over engage or expect over engagement in an online course while also still expecting engagement and participation. Because honestly, they're used to being able to sit and get in a lot of spaces, and I'm not that human. So my course evaluations reflected that, that they would prefer to sit and get, and they would prefer to write a paper a lot of the time. And that's disappointing, because it would be a lot easier if I just graded on whether their PowerPoint looked nice and if they could write a paper, right? But that's not what we need teachers to do. When they get in the field, I don't need them to be able to write a paper. I need them to be able to understand how to help kids show their learning in unique ways. So that means they have to practice learning and showing their learning in unique ways. And so This semester I'm looking for that balance on how do I get what I need as the instructor for course evaluations and feedback, and still make sure they get what they need, and that I hold them to a standard of what I would want them to be able to do in a classroom. And so I'm navigating that right now. I'm not sure how that's going to play out, but I do know that because of my participation in this course, I feel confident about my choices in the way I'm asking people to represent their learning, and that I also feel confident that I'm not boxing anybody in. And so if high standards is the problem, then I guess that'll show up and I'm okay with that. But I at least feel like I've been able to adapt the way I teach so that I'm scaffolding their choice making, or I'm scaffolding the way that my expectations. So the expectations are high, but they're scaffolded. The grading piece in general, they're tired and they want to, and it's really important to them to get A's. And I wish we didn't live like that in this society. I wish we worried more about learning from our mistakes and building relationships with our own thinking, but that's not how the scale is. And so I think I just have to be very clear with students about what I'm looking for. I'm looking for your learning. I'm not looking for perfection. And sometimes that's hard for students, especially when they're straight A students.
And hopefully they can take that thinking with them into the classroom as well.
I hope so.
My last question, and Ashley may have another question after I'm done, but this is my last one. At the beginning, she mentioned, 1+ thinking. So going forward, do you have a 1+ that you're maybe looking to try out going forward in your UDL journey?
As I'm looking into this semester and I think about, okay, what do I want to do next, right? Or what do I want to do different with my courses? My next step, the thing I want to work on next, is really looking at the physical design of my online courses in a new way. And I know that means coming into the office ideas and getting some feedback. It also means making time during waking hours. But I think that's the the 1+ for me is I've really worked on that instructional side. I've really worked on navigating student engagement. And now I really want to work on making sure my course feels like visually engaging to students, but also easy to manage. Yeah, I think that's what's next for me.
Dr. Lindsay Meeker, thank you for taking the time to talk with us this afternoon.
Have a great day.
To learn more, visit our website, academics.fresnostate.edu/ideas, or contact us to share your story, ideas@mail.fresnostate.edu.